Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking a really fascinating piece of source material that takes us straight into the unseen world. We're going to be looking at the extensive research and claims of Egyptian journalist and researcher Muhammad Isa Dawood. Now, Dawood spent his life investigating a huge question. Does the realm of jinns, which are supernatural beings deeply rooted in Islamic theology, actually exist? And if it does, is human contact with them even possible? Well, he actually documented what he claims was a direct, extended conversation with a Muslim jinn. It's a completely wild, compelling narrative, and today we're going to break down exactly what that source material reveals.
So let's just dive right into that core question. Is contact possible? Dawood's entire objective was to see if he could reach out without resorting to the dark arts. According to his writings, he was super strict about this. No black magic, no talismans, absolutely no demonic practices. Instead, he claimed to use only pure methods derived from the Quran and Sunnah, the prophetic traditions. And after an immense amount of effort, he states that a jinn willingly made contact with him, initiating this extraordinary dialogue just to clear up all the human misconceptions about their kind. And that brings us to the actual entity he spoke with. It was a Muslim jinn from India who introduced himself as Ibn a Kanjoor. And right out of the gate, he dropped a highly specific and frankly pretty eerie claim. When Dawood asked if jinns are hanging around us, Ibn a Kanjoor supposedly just smiled and dropped this massive reality check. He claimed, yes, they are literally in our homes. They're sharing our meals, resting on our furniture, and in the case of Muslim jinns, he says they even wake humans up for the dawn prayer. It's wild because it instantly takes this vast supernatural concept and drops it right into your living room.
Okay, that leads us right into our first major theme, the life and society of a jinn.
First up, we got to talk about time, because this really illustrates the vast gulf between our two species. While we max out at around a century if we're lucky, Ibn a Kanjoor claims jinns regularly live for thousands of years. We're talking commonly 4,000, 5,000, or even up to 7,000 years. Just to put that into perspective for a second, during this interview, Ibn a Kanjoor stated he was 180 years old. In human terms, the guy was essentially just a teenager.
So their whole life cycle is completely scaled up, but at the same time, it's surprisingly domestic. They reach adulthood around 170 to 180 years of age, and from there, they get married. Female jinns experience a massive 15-month pregnancy, and when they finally give birth, they deliver a literal litter. We're talking 7 to 8 unusually tall, very loud babies all at once. And just like us, they've got structured societies, they have schools and professions to prepare their youth. Oh, and Dawood also asked about intermarriage with humans, and Ibn a Kanjoor basically said it's nearly impossible. Offspring are exceptionally rare just because the two creations are so fundamentally different. To really wrap your head around that kind of lifespan, the source material brings up this amazing historical anecdote involving the scholar Hazrat Sale. So Sahal reportedly encountered an old jinn who was praying towards the Kaaba. And this jinn was wearing a glowing wool robe. When Sahal asked him about this radiant garment, the jinn calmly replied that he'd been wearing it for 700 years. He wore that exact same robe when he met the Prophet Jesus, and then, centuries later, wore it again when he met the Prophet Muhammad. It's just a vivid illustration of how a single jinn's lifetime can casually span entire epochs of human history.
All right, moving on to theme 2, habitats and physical forms. So if they exist right alongside us for millennia, where are they hiding? Well, according to the text, while humans dominate the land, jinns completely hold dominion over the waters. They boast these massive cities and settlements deep beneath the oceans. When they're on land, they prefer isolation, vast deserts where they're known as Gorv, as well as remote caves and mountain valleys. But here's the fascinating part. Just like human societies, they have different religions. The source notes that Christian jinns prefer to live near Christian human homes, and Muslim jinns prefer Muslim homes, often just hanging out right in the corners of our courtyards and rooms.
And what do they actually look like? Well, Ibn a Kanjoor explains that they are incredibly diverse. They come in various colors, but you'll find they predominantly appear as black, making up about 40% of them, followed by white, red, and golden. Some of them even have wings and can fly. Interestingly, when Dawood asked which color they actually prefer, Ibn a Kanjoor said they favor black, simply because it absorbs all other colors and gives them extra energy and power.
And this brilliantly illustrates their most famous trait, right? Shapeshifting. While their true form is completely hidden from us, they can manifest as physical animals, mostly dogs, wolves, or crawling creatures like snakes. But there is a massive catch to this. Taking a physical form makes them incredibly vulnerable.
It's a physically painful process. And here's the crazy part. If a human manages to kill them while they are in that animal form, they actually die. For real. Which is exactly why most jinns actively avoid manifesting in front of humans.
The source provides a really striking visual anecdote to back this up, citing historical accounts from figures like Abdullah bin Safwan. They apparently witnessed a glowing snake enter the Grand Mosque in Mecca, but it didn't act like a wild animal at all. It deliberately performed tawaf, circling the Kaaba, then slithered over to a very specific spot, Maqam Abraham, to pray, before suddenly just flying straight up into the sky. It's a perfect, almost cinematic visual of a jinn utilizing a physical form to fulfill a religious duty before disappearing right back into the unseen.
Which brings us to theme 3, and things take a bit of a darker turn here. Iblis and the Dark Realms.
You can't really talk about this topic without bringing up Iblis, the absolute oldest, most ancient jinn. In the interview, Ibn Kanjoor actually recalled being taken to see him as a child, and he described a terrifying sight, a giant, immensely ugly entity with a long tail, capable of changing shapes, just commanding millions of demonic servants. Dawood asked where he lives, and the answer is so specific. His throne supposedly sits right over the ocean, specifically in locations where hot and cold water currents violently collide. These are areas that generate massive storms and chaotic energy. It's a very vivid, very terrifying description of his domain.
Now, this dark realm actually bleeds into our world through black magic. The interview outlines that dark magicians basically enslave or partner with rogue jinns to inflict chaos on people. The source lists some very real-world consequences attributed to this. We're talking about creating sudden, extreme hatred between spouses that leads to divorce, unexplainable business collapses, physical diseases that completely baffle modern doctors, and severe mental isolation or terrifying nightmares. It's framed as this incredibly destructive alliance between malevolent humans and unseen forces.
So you're probably wondering, who is actually at risk here? Well, Ibn Kanjoor laid out some very specific, almost folklore-style rules for vulnerability. Those who forget their spiritual connection are prime targets, obviously. But interestingly, you can also be targeted purely by accident. For example, pouring boiling water down a drain or dropping a heavy object without saying a warning. You might inadvertently harm a hidden jinn, which prompts them to retaliate. He also specifically warned against excessive displays of vanity, claiming that certain jinns are actually drawn to human beauty.
Okay, let's get into our final theme, protection and ultimate mortality.
So the absolute crucial point here is protection. How do you defend yourself? Ibn Kanjoor prescribed very specific spiritual defenses. He cited verses from the Quran, specifically Ayatul Kursi, the first 10 verses of Surah Safat, Surah Ibrahim, Surah Mu'minun, and the final chapters of the Quran, Falaq and Nas. He claimed that reciting these creates a literal impenetrable barrier, totally breaking the influence of dark magic and keeping those malevolent forces at bay.
But zooming out for a second and looking at the big picture, Dawood posed a massive theological question. If these creatures live for literally thousands of years, do they ever actually die, or are they just immortal?
Well, the source material is very clear in contrasting this. Iblis is the one major exception. According to the text, he has been granted a divine respite until Judgment Day. As he ages, his body magically resets, eternally reverting back to his prime age of 30. But for all other regular jinns, and that includes Ibn Kanjoor, they are entirely mortal. They experience natural death, and their souls are taken, exactly like ours are.
And this part just brilliantly illustrates how incredibly structured this whole universe is. The source cites the scholar Abdullah bin Abbas, who detailed this highly bureaucratic system of death. There isn't just one angel of death doing all the work. There are 4 distinct categories. One is tasked solely with reaping the souls of humans and angels. A completely separate angel is assigned exclusively to reap the souls of the jinns, a third one handles wild animals, and a fourth is just for cattle. It just proves that despite their vast powers, their shape-shifting, and those millennia-long lifespans, jinns are bound by the exact same ultimate cosmic laws of mortality as we are. So, we've unpacked some truly incredible details from Dawood's investigation today, from underwater cities and 7,000-year lifespans to glowing serpents and the highly structured systems of their societies. It's a vast, incredibly complex picture painted by this source material, and it leaves us with a really provocative thought to ponder. If even a fraction of these claims are true, and all of this is happening just beyond the very limits of our vision, what other ancient secrets remain hidden in the unseen world, operating right beside us in our very own homes? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown was as fascinating for you to hear as it was for me to share.